In the 18th century, it was not unusual for officers to serve in the armies of foreign states. A fine example of this is the Scottish nobleman James Francis Edward Keith, who is honored in Berlin with a monument and the Keith Street, as the true spree Athenians call it. After Keith had to leave his homeland as a Scottish freedom fighter, he served for 17 years in the Imperial Russian service. In 1747, he requested his discharge and then turned to Frederick the Great, after which something unique happened in the history of the Brandenburg Prussian army. For old Fritz had taken the 51-year-old Russian general of Scottish descent, Keith, directly into the Prussian army as a field marshal, where he distinguished himself in several battles of the 7 Years' War. However, with the emergence and strengthening of nation-states, it became increasingly frowned upon to serve foreign rulers or armies. Consequently, at the beginning of the First World War, there were only a few foreign officers who had left their homeland and their armies to fight in the German ranks out of pure idealism. The most distinguished among them was the then cavalry captain in the Royal Swedish Horse Guards, Gilbert Count Hamilton. The pipe smokers among you may associate his name with the pipe tobacco blend he invented, Count Gilbert Hamilton, which dates back to the First World War. When good tobacco became increasingly scarce in Germany, some people smoked dried leaves, so the Hamilton family in Stockholm sent him the 4 types of pipe tobacco available in Sweden, which he then used to create his Count Hamilton tobacco blend. After returning to Sweden following the war, he continued to offer this blend commercially until it was taken over by the Swedish tobacco monopoly in 1924. And since then, it has also been marketed internationally under his name, including for cigars. Gilbert Count Hamilton was born on March 20th, 1869, on the family estate in Hedensburg, Sweden, as the second son of the landowner Gustav Malcolm Hamilton and his wife Sophia, Baroness von Barnekow, who came from an ancient family of Mecklenburg and Pomerania that also produced a number of generals in Prussia. This may have been one of the reasons why Gilbert Hamilton felt a close connection to the Kingdom of Prussia from an early age. Originally, the Hamiltons were a Scottish family who were already mentioned on October 14th, 1066, at the Battle of Hastings, where the Norman army under Duke William the Conqueror defeated the Anglo-Saxons under their King Harold II. After moving to Sweden in the 16th century, the Hamiltons repeatedly held influential positions in the Swedish army, which was highly regarded at the time. But after Gilbert enlisted as a volunteer in the Swedish Life Guard on horseback, stationed in Örebro, about 200 kilometers west of Stockholm, on the 29th of October, 1886, his first years as a soldier did not exactly promise a brilliant career. After his promotion to sergeant on May 13, 1889, he attended the Royal Military Academy, founded in 1792 at the Karlberg Palace in the north of Stockholm. But both here and at the riding school in Strömsholm, which had been established in 1621, he had to take several courses twice before he passed the exam, on October 28, 1891, with average grades. On the 13th of November, 1991, he was promoted to second lieutenant in the Mounted Bodyguard, and on the 10th of September, 1997, he became a lieutenant. Then, during the Turkish-Greek War for Crete, which lasted from the 3rd to the 4th of February 1897, and in which the major European powers, Russia, France, the United Kingdom, and the Kingdom of Italy, were heavily involved. His request to participate was not approved by the Swedish army. His request to participate in the Second Boer War, which lasted from 1899 to 1902, a war of conquest waged by imperialist Great Britain against the two Boer republics of the Orange Free State and the South African Republic for their mineral resources, was also rejected, as was his attempt to participate in the Russo-Japanese War, which took place from 1904 to 1905. A note on this. The French Wikipedia page states exactly the opposite, namely that he took part in all three wars. The fact is that he was rejected 3 times. However, there is no record of which army he wanted to join, or whether he just wanted to observe the fighting as a war tourist. Gilbert Hamilton married Maria Antonia von Soima, a Russian noblewoman born in 1872 in St. Petersburg on November 22, 1898 in Helsinki. He had 3 children with her: Felix Count Hamilton, born in 1899, who later became a cavalry reserve officer and notary, and their daughter Maria Antonia von Soima, born in 1901. She married Serge von Kuster in Berlin on January 8, 1940, son of Russian Senator Vladimir von Kuster, a former captain of the Russian Preobrazhensky Lifeguard Regiment in 1896. Here, the last commander, General of the Infantry Alexander Kutupov, cuts the shoulder boards from his uniform during the disbandment that took place in 1917. During the Second World War, former Captain Serge von Kuster was an SS Hauptsturmführer in the reserve, equivalent to a captain, and commander of the 14th Waffen Flag Division in the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS, Ukrainian No. 1, which was formed in the summer of 1943. Von Kuster has been missing since the summer of 1944, when 8 German divisions were destroyed and another 32 divisions were severely damaged in the Brody Pocket, 90 kilometers northeast of Lemberg in Ukraine. Count Gilbert and Maria Antonia's 3rd child, born in 1904, was James Malcolm Gerald Fitzgilbert Hamilton, who later became a Swedish lieutenant colonel. Through his parents-in-law's numerous visits to Tsarskoye Selo, the illustrious residence of the Tsarist family, now Pushkin, 24 kilometers south of St. Petersburg, Gilbert learned Russian, which would later serve him well. On May 1, 1908, Hamilton was promoted to cavalry captain and began participating in the glamorous social life of St. Petersburg, where he became friends with Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich Romanov. In 1912, during the Olympic Games in Stockholm, Hamilton was one of the supervisors of the group of Russian officers who participated in the Olympic equestrian competitions. Among them was Grand Duke Dmitry, who placed 9th in the individual show jumping competition and 5th with the team. As for Gilbert Hamilton's marriage to Maria Antonia von Soima, it had been dissolved on the 19th of October, 1921 in St. Petersburg. Only a few weeks later, on December 3rd, he married Elin Katharina Lieberg in his garrison town of Execuy, but he was also divorced from her on September 22, 1930. He then remarried her on September 3, 1932, but this marriage also ended in divorce on December 27, 1939. His last marriage took place on the 6th of July, 1941 in Linköping Cathedral with Elsa Erich, née Schumburg, born in 1802. From May 1, 1908 to October 27, 1914, Count Hamilton was in Stockholm as a cavalry captain and chief of the 2nd Squadron of the Royal Swedish Horse Guards. Meanwhile, on the 1st of August 1914, the First World War had broken out, in which Sweden, which was rather friendly towards Germany, remained neutral. However, this was not the case for Gilbert Hamilton, who had resigned from the Swedish army at the end of October and had gone to Germany. Here, he was initially assigned as squadron chief to the Life Cuirassier Regiment Great Elector, Silesian No. 1, which in November 14 was transferred to the Eastern Front, where it was mainly deployed in Russian Poland and the Carpathians. On the 27th of January 15, Hamilton was promoted to German major and took command of the 3rd Battalion, with which he defended the bridges of Burstin, as shown here at the end of June in Galicia, against Russian forces that were often vastly superior in numbers. From November 12th, 15 to March 11th, 18, he was commander of the 22nd Reserve Jaeger Battalion, which consisted exclusively of reservists, and was stationed for 2 years in a position about 5 kilometers south of Pinsk, in the middle of the Prepyzumphe. During this time, he was promoted to German lieutenant colonel on the 28th of June, 16. After a visit home on leave, Hamilton was transferred in March 18 to the staff of the Baltic Sea Division of the so-called German general in Finland, Lieutenant General Rüdiger Graf von der Goltz, and took part in the Finnish Civil War. As commander of a mobile unit, the Hamilton Detachment, he fought successfully against the Bolshevik Reds during the advance towards Helsinki. Then, on June 13, 18, he became commander of the Cuirassier Regiment Graf Wrangel, East Prussian No. 3, which was then deployed for security tasks against partisans in southern Ukraine. In central Ukraine, he visited the battlefield of the Battle of Poltava, where 200 years earlier, on the 8th of July, 1707, during the Russian campaign of the Swedish king Charles I, his ancestor Major General Hugo Hamilton had commanded the Östergötland Cavalry Regiment. However, this battle ended in a decisive victory for the Russians. Hamilton was captured and spent over 12 years in captivity. It was only after the signing of the Treaty of Nystad in 1721 that he was able to return to Sweden a year later. When the German Empire had to capitulate in November 1918, and orders for Hamilton stopped coming, he and his regiment, still stationed in southern Ukraine, were suddenly completely on their own. Between their positions and their home garrison in Königsberg lay around 2,000 kilometers that had to be covered on foot and on horseback, repeatedly attacked by Soviet revolutionary units. When the troops led by Ukrainian revolutionary Simon Petlura also took up hostile positions, Wrangel's cuirassiers once again accelerated their march towards Kiev. After the regiment had joined German units that had joined them and arrived at a constantly growing camp on the wide Dnieper River, Hamilton realized that a peaceful crossing of the river would be impossible in view of the Ukrainian fighters stationed there, and decided that instead of risking human lives pointlessly, he would meet with Petlura for negotiations. He then traveled to Kiev on a locomotive that happened to be passing by, where, after negotiations with the Ukrainian politician, he received permission to cross the 1-kilometer-long Struve railway bridge with all his soldiers. This bridge was blown up in 1920 by Polish troops during their retreat from Kiev, after the joint Polish-Ukrainian anti-Soviet Kiev offensive. Hamilton had also received 1 million rubles in cash from the Ukrainian leader to pay for food and fodder for the men and horses during their march to East Prussia. During the meeting with Petlura, he was able to negotiate in Russian, which probably contributed to the successful outcome of the negotiations. Even after crossing the Dnieper, more German cavalry units joined the Wrangel cuirassiers, so that their strength had more than doubled by the end of the march. Then, on the 22nd of February 1919, after 2 months of unheard-of hardships, Hamilton arrived in Königsberg with the trumpet choir and the kettle drummer at the head of the column, cheered by the population, who until then had believed that the regiment had been destroyed in Russia. When, in 1939, the 20th anniversary of the happy return of the Wangel cuirassiers from the First World War was celebrated extensively in Königsberg, Hamilton was awarded an honorary cup and appointed honorary commander of the traditional unit of the Graf Wangel Regiment. He was also allowed to sign the Golden Book of Königsberg. While serving in the Prussian army, Hamilton was awarded both Iron Crosses and the Cross of the Knights, with swords of the House Order of Hohenzollern, which was widely regarded as the precursor to the Pour le Mérite. After leaving Prussian service, Hamilton returned in 1920 as a supernumerary major to his Swedish parent unit, the Life Guards of Horse, which promoted him to lieutenant colonel on November 26, 1920. Then, on October 21, 1921, he was promoted to colonel and appointed commander of the famous Smoland Hussar Regiment in Eksjö, founded in 1543, at the head of which King Gustav II, Adolf fell on November 6, 1632, at Lützen near Leipzig. During his 6 years as commander until 1927, Hamilton brought the regiment to the peak of military discipline and combat readiness. However, he was forced to disband the regiment during the Swedish disarmament and retired in 1927, but continued to be consulted on military matters and was appointed to the Royal War Academy in 1931. As for his relationship with Germany, it never broke off. This is how Königsberg saw the Swedish colonel and German lieutenant colonel at commemorative ceremonies for his Wrangel cuirassiers. And in the summer of 1926, he was a guest of the 2nd German Cavalry Division in Breslau for 2 weeks. Perhaps the greatest recognition he received from the German side was his several weeks of service as wing adjutant to Wilhelm II in his Dutch exile in Doorn from 1929 to 1931. In 1937, the War History of the Reserve Jaeger Battalion, 22, which Hamilton had co-edited, was published. As a monarchist, Count Hamilton was neither a supporter of the Weimar Republic nor of the Third Reich. On the 27th of August 1939, during the celebrations marking the 25th anniversary of the victory in the Battle of Tannenberg, Hamilton was awarded the rank of German Major General. On the 11th of August, 1947, at the age of 87, Gilbert Count Hamilton, a great friend of our country, who had long been forgotten in Germany, passed away at the Swedish family estate Sadensburg.